Meeting for the CIC of Monday, February 6, 2023 is called to order. Dennis, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. February 6th, partially up Healeyville, Carlin.
Here.
Dee Dee.
Here.
Linda's here for Kenema. Dennis is here for Kenema. We have Josh from Hillendale. Eric Rowe is inactive. Kathy Lang is inactive. Dan, are you here? Yes. McLaughlin, Denise
Here.
and Will. And Park Place, Steve. Here. Back with a tan. And Bob, I'm here. And I believe that's our group.
Is here.
And Emily.
You can sit in the shower. As they let you know that we don't have mics today, so we're trying to speak really loud into that microphone.
I think that doesn't bother me. Okay, I'm still getting my roster today here.
Sarah.
Okay,
I may include Sarah.
Sarah, you can come sit here. I still have to go fire because I'm here today.
don't mind.
Yeah. Blessing of me. That's what we must speak well. Oh.
Is Tony here from turning up the Two Rivers neighbor? Tony is not here. We have a strong potential for getting the Two Rivers Neighborhood Association up and going again. Tony from I think it's the antique shop there on was it Washington?
And Abernethy?
In Abernethy, I think he runs that. Jerry Herman has been contacting me and he's working with him to try to get that up and going. So that'd be great. That'd be just wonderful. Get another neighborhood association active again. It'd be wonderful. Let's see. As you all know, anybody who came in late, we had difficulties. Christina did a great job getting everything put together so we could record tonight because our normal system is discombobulated or whatever. So you have to speak up when you speak tonight. Our first presentation is the Chamber of Commerce, Victoria.
Hello, everybody. Do I need to go all the way over there?
You come up, yeah.
Just checking. Yeah. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Victoria Meinig. I'm with this Oregon City Chamber of Commerce. It's great to get to report that we have recently finished up our small business grants. So we put up $250,000 back into our community. So we're pretty excited about that. And then now we are currently working on an HR series. It's a 6-month-long series for the businesses. It will be at no cost to them. And then they will also get an hour of consultation after. So it will be 6 different parts, not just talking about HR policy, but also talking about recruitment, how to hire, go through the hiring process to actually attract employees and so forth. So I'm pretty excited about that. And then we're also getting just started working on a workforce program. So I'll be able to tell you more about that as I create that system. So that's really all I have, you guys. Unless you have any questions or something.
Victoria, when a new business comes into Oregon City, are you the one that contacts them to maybe hook up with the chamber, or?
Currently my director of chamber services does that.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And is that person pretty successful at getting memberships?
Yes, she's doing a great job. Trista's doing it. Most of you all know Trista Andrews. So yeah, she's doing a fantastic job.
Good. Any other questions?
Sure. All right.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming and joining us.
You guys, good night.
Okay, now the next presentation I gave for this school, reserved this whole meeting, for them, but I think I'll take public comment first, before we get into the Abernethy Green. We have one comment from William Gifford, or a series of comments, I don't know which.
Land use chair for that association. A couple of things that I wanted to mention. There are a few of the neighborhoods that are currently using Zoom for their meetings. It's a very convenient way of getting together. And when I set that up, I set it up using a Gmail address from Google. And so there is also a Google account that is available to anybody that wants it, that we can use for a variety of things. Several months ago, Sal asked me to make a presentation on all the things we could do with it, and I'm not going to go into it right now. I sent you an email of all the things that I think would be that the neighborhood associations could take advantage of, and I don't know if you're ever planning on following up with that.
I don't think I ever got that email. I don't recall getting it.
I'll be happy to send it to you again.
Please do.
It's been a while. It's been a while. A couple of the things at issue, however, is that there's a recording facility on Zoom that I know that a few of the neighborhoods are using or have been using, but that is full. And unless the neighborhood associations start deleting some of their recordings, there's not any space to do any more recordings. It's just that simple. They can download it to their own hard drives, or they can delete them, or whatever they'd like to do. It's a convenient way of keeping track of things, and it certainly helps secretaries in doing the minutes. However, if you want to do that, do it. Or the CIC could authorize purchase of more space on Zoom in their cloud, and they could continue to just record things in the cloud, and it could be there forever. That's something else. The other thing was
which way would be in your opinion, which would be the easiest and best to do?
Easiest and best, not always mutually exclusive. I have a recommendation that if neighborhood association meetings are considered public meetings, and I think that they are, but that's kind of a gray area. I know that there is a state regulation that requires all of those things to allow Zoom access to your meetings. I think that there may also be a requirement for recording. However, I haven't seen anything that talks about how long those recordings need to be kept. I would think as long as you've done your minutes, you probably don't need to keep them, except for historical review.
I wouldn't think that if you have written minutes, you wouldn't need your recordings.
You're right. You wouldn't need them. However, and I think that our city recorder has found, sometimes it's pretty handy to go back and untangle exactly who said what and who made what motion. And if something didn't get written down, it's nice to have that at least while you're preparing the minutes. The other thing is, so the other option would be buy more space. I haven't done the research yet to see how much it would cost. I don't think it's very much. The question would be, the more space you have, the more stuff you keep, right? So, and I'm too frugal to think that the city ought to be spending any more money than it needs to. So I would recommend that the neighborhood associations just be cognizant of that limitation. If that's understandable, and if not, contact me and I'll talk about it. I rustled up the invoice because for the last few years, last couple of years anyway, I've been paying for the Zoom account for $149.90 a year. And the city has reimbursed me a couple of times for that.
Correct. The last year's meeting, the CIC voted, I think, to be able to support you perpetually.
Yes,
So if you want to send me that invoice, I can get that processed.
I'm going to do that as soon as I'm finished talking. However, it seems to me prudent that I have come to realize, some people have told me, and it was a shock to me, that I'm not going to live forever. I wasn't aware of that, and it's still to be verified, but I think that I'm not going to be around forever to be continuing to use my charge card. And it seems to me as though it would be prudent for the city to assume that the city has a charge card, that the city has an account, that they could be charging directly and get me out of the loop. If the CIC is so amenable, otherwise I'll just have to continue doing it for as long as I can, which is not going to be forever. I expect the city will be here forever.
What would be involved in that, Christina?
Two items. I think one will need more research. That was basically paying through PayPal, which could be something the city could do. What the city didn't want to do was have their card, their city-owned card, on a neighborhood association Zoom account, and so we couldn't just suddenly, like, I couldn't just ask Aquila to give me her card. And so we would have to do like through a PayPal thing, so you couldn't come back to it. So let me pay for that this year. And then let me see if we can switch to a PayPal account. And then maybe, I think what we're learning from a lot of people is create generic logins where a lot of people have
Something I will.
password. And then if one person is not available, we don't lose the account.
So rather than using personal mail accounts, as a Gene and Bob or whatever you want to have for an email address, or you could have something like chair with the neighborhood association associated with it. And when the chairs switch, as musical chairs happen, then the next person can use that address as well. And that way the city doesn't have to maintain those.
Sure, but even the account for this Zoom account would be best if it was a generic account that more than one people have them. If we go to a PayPal option.
Oh yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Right now, I think that I have given anybody that asks for it the username and password for that Google account, which is what is used for the Zoom account. So I didn't want to get those two confused, but I didn't want to take up all your precious time tonight, or all of Mr. Paulson's precious time. Henderson, sorry. Yeah. Oh, I worry about it a lot. But we can talk about that some other time. I just want to get that on the table, and if you'd like to pursue this more, I'd be happy to show you all the wonderful things that are available on that. The last thing that I would mention,
Before you go further, anybody who is using that system, sounds like you need to start erasing minutes or whatever you have on the system, and put, if you wish to get them in writing.
So, if I may, YouTube is another wonderful resource. You could take and download the videos from Zoom, put it up on YouTube, and then there you have your archive. And it's not exactly going to cost you anything
and because
other than a little time.
And because we have a Google account, we have a YouTube account.
Exactly.
And we can save all of those recordings on YouTube.
Yep. So I personally wouldn't think there'd be any need to do any more space expansion when you have that ability right there. So
I agree. I think that's a swell idea. But again, that's something we can iron out later. I just wanted to get it on people's radar. The last thing that I would mention, completely aside from all of this, is sort of a public service announcement that on the 4th is the Oregon City Business Alliance, and this month we are having a panel discussion on the topic of housing, something near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. And so that's always down at the Abernethy Abernethy Center from 11:30 to 1 on the fourth Tuesdays, and you can go to ocbusinessalliance.com or whatever it is. Just do a search and you can find it, and go to the website and get the information on that. I think that a number of people would be interested in the subject of housing.
Recording in progress.
the construction specialist. Another one is, I believe they call it supervisor in our PPA. So we have a plan in place that says, if you impact the trash layer, this is how it's assessed. It's got to go to, I think it's a class 3 landfill location. So there are specific other landfill locations that this type of hazardous material can go to. Thanks.
William, have a question?
If you'd be so kind to entertain questions from the peanut gallery. I thought that the question that was trying to be responded to, can you hear that? Speak up. Yeah. I thought the question was, what's going to happen if nothing gets done? And a lot of great information, but I didn't hear anything about, are those $24,000 taxes? What's the potential upside if something does happen?
So I expect that there will be a question before the end of the night about the ballot measure. Yes. So I will go into detail on that. So it's the property taxes are anywhere between $3 and $4 million a year once this is complete. So we can talk about how are we coming up with those numbers. What's the return on investment for the city? So there's a lot of information there, and that's actually why I have the paper, because I imagine I'll have to. I'm very visual, so I'll have to do some drawing on that one.
Thank you. And was there some? Did you have another question?
Yeah, I just have a question about the pile driving, and I probably missed that because I wasn't at other meetings. How many pilings or pylons are you going to be banging in? Do you know?
So,
how long will that go on for? Noise-wise.
Yes. So they are called piles. You are correct. It depends on a couple of things. It depends on how many buildings do we have? What type of buildings are they? So how many floors? What is the load? So what's the frequency that you have to have those piles? Are they driven? Are they augured? So we still have to figure out that. Are they steel? Are they precast? So we have to look at, based on we'll have to do corrosion testing to determine what is the best pile type based on how long those piles have to last. From my experience with piles getting knocked into soft material, I've been on a project where it was driven into a silt material. That reduces a lot of the noise disturbance, but I wish I could give you an exact answer how many, and then it comes down to, do we have 1 rig or 2 rigs, and what is their production per day? And
I mean, when Home Depot went in, it went on for months, day and night. And that's the small project compared to yours. So I'm just wondering what the impact is going to be on the surrounding neighborhoods when you're doing this. And is there something you can refer to Home Depot's experience with what they've done? I mean, they must be banging through the same material. So could you talk to their engineers?
So we have a lot of the data from that project, and one of the engineers that worked on it is actually working on our project as well, and the geotechnical information has been shared. Part of the challenge is there's no uniformity. So you could say a building this location on landfill and a building on this location, they could have very different results. So it's an indicator, but I can do some analysis with our engineers and come back and say we think based on 2 rigs on site, if we're executing exactly what's currently shown in the GDP, this is approximately how many piles we'd be working with at these production rates. This is how long it would take. If that would be helpful.
I think people would like to know that. It took hundreds of piles for Home Depot. So I'm imagining it's thousands. So
I imagine So this is, don't hold me to it. I imagine it'll probably be somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 files. But yeah, I have to go through the math with our engineers.
So that will take months, if not a year, of banging to get them all down through the.
Yeah, well, based on the size of the site, we will be using multiple rigs, which will essentially cut the land down.
Right, but be louder because you'll have multiple bangings going on.
If every single one is driven and we're not bothering any of those files.
Okay, let's hope we're ordering, yeah.
Yeah, I have a question about long-term testing of air quality. Like, say everything doesn't go as planned, given that this will be primary residence for potentially a lot of people, is there going to be some kind of like backup in case the cap has a leak or that makes detection of pollution?
Yeah, so in terms of how a methane gas mitigation system is designed, you have inline fans that you can change the velocity of to increase or decrease depending on what are the emissions that they're actually monitoring. So if I don't think it would be an issue of a leak in the cap. I think it would be the rate of decomposition is generating additional gas than anticipated. So in that case, you would modify the velocity of these inline fans to speed it up.
Okay.
But we have to test at those locations with DEQ guidance through 2056.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Is there multiple, like how many sites where will be those tests done? Like, and then location, especially I guess in the residential areas.
So it's called out in our PPA, and I don't have that number offhand, but there are multiple locations that are required.
Okay, yeah, and I guess I'm wondering too, like if the contents of the the disposal were not monitored, how can it like is there going to be testing for additional pollutants in addition to methane, and how can it how could those potentially be mitigated given that the contents are unknown?
Yeah, so there's in our PPA, there's a list of all the gases that are currently off-gassing on the site. And DEQ has stated of these gases that are currently off-gassing, methane is the only one that we're concerned with. And so I'm listening to the DEQ. It's their job to enforce law and regulations.
Yeah.
So it would be an interesting situation if suddenly there was a gas showing up that hasn't shown up since they've been testing, 83 until now. That would be a really unique situation.
Yeah, it was a very long time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Denise.
I have a question about the methane. The microphones don't work. Talk really loud. You gotta talk loud. Will you be able to collect the methane and use it?
We will not. So there are 3 levels of methane emissions determined by DEQ. There's collection for sale, which was done at one point on the site. There's burn off. So if there's a certain level, not so much you can collect it, but enough that you need to burn it off. And we are in the 3rd category. So similar to Home Depot, the bigger concern for the DEQ is that methane gas collecting in one location because it's combusted.
I have one little nice note thing here.
Yeah.
On that research paper that you sent around, I noticed that one of the original land
Recording stopped.
Oh, the red light just go on and off.
Okay, almost there. And I'm gonna record from my computer, so 1 second.
Recording in progress.
Okay, we're back.
My question was, what has your interaction been with the Native American tribes?
So at this time, the only group that we have had conversations with is the Grand Roland to date. And that was really surrounding what are you planning for Tumwala Village, and how do we make sure that your development and the existing historic downtown and our development are all supporting one another and not competing against one another. So that was a lot of the discussion. And it was also, here's what we've done to date, and this is what's worked, and this is what hasn't, and these are the grants we're looking at, and just trying to provide some lessons learned. So, and then obviously the inadvertent discovery plan that was shared, that's been the extent of it to me.
I've seen some past meetings where I think there was a requirement to interact or communicate with, I think there's 5 different tribes. I don't know if any of that applies to this particular situation, but it might be something to.
Technical answer. At any pre-application conference where soil is going to be moved, we do send notice to the Oregon tribes and the Yakama Nation. And I do know that the Better Tribes Umatilla Indian Reservation is aware and has been in contact with our president.
It would be great. So we've reached out to all the neighborhood associations and a lot of other groups asking if they want an update, if they want Q&A. Can we get from you the contact information just so we can reach out to them?
Yeah.
Appreciate that recommendation.
Jackie, you had a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. Years ago, when the Rivers was gonna propose down there, I had a word with, our city engineer was Nancy Crusher at the time. And I was talking about, what about housing? And she said, oh, no, you can't put housing on it because of the methane, potential explosive property, that it needs to be a development where it can be evacuated quickly. So we would never allow residential to be on that property. And that struck me because when I read your proposal, it did include residential. So has something changed maybe, or?
Obviously I wasn't privy to that conversation.
A long time.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what generated that comment. I can tell you today there are examples of housing in the US, if not a lot more abroad, that have been built on top of landfills.
Right.
So I don't know if there's been more experience since that time. We've had, again, I can refer a lot to the DEQ. And going through the prospective purchaser agreement, it's talking about what we're putting on site. And I would expect that if they had specific concerns about that, being that they're backstopping our liability, that they would raise it.
Yeah.
But the engineers that we have on our team, the DEQ engineers that have reviewed it, that hasn't been raised as an issue. I mean, it's very similar to radon. Radon is not explosive, it's not combustive, but also that gas being captured in space. That's why a lot of single-family homes have a radon inline system. The idea behind that system is to make sure that you don't end up having pockets.
Okay.
Good. Go ahead with your presentation.
Oh, well, it's not much of a presentation, it's just going through previous questions, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, if we have to do a presentation, we're in trouble because I'm drawing it tonight, right? So you had asked about the John Williams article, and I've had 2 months now to sit and think about this. So I had lunch with Jerry Herman and John Williams on November 15th, 2021 at the Riverview Bar and Grill. And at that time, his first complaint against the Urban Renewal Commission was going through the process. And the whole impetus behind that discussion was, is our project one that you believe is a good use of urban renewal funds? It seems like from your complaint that a lot of the concern is how the funds have been used previously. I mean, the whole idea behind tax increment financing is you are using funds to move along developments in blighted areas to increase the tax basis. That's the idea behind it. So if you're doing projects that don't have a primary return on investment, for instance, a structure somewhere nearby, the question would be, how are you going to pay for that bond if not from the dollars that are already being collected? So went to lunch with him. I checked my notes afterwards. I actually called Jerry Herman when that article came out, and I asked him, I said, did I miss something? Because it was my understanding after that lunch that John Williams believed this was potentially a project that made sense for urban renewal funds being used. And Jerry's like, that was my recollection as well. So when this article came out, I was initially really angry because I tried to go through the effort of meeting the people that I know have had issues with other developments in the city and understand why do they have issues and how can we do it differently? How can we do it better? How can we get people excited about this project? So initially I was really mad. There are a lot of opinion pieces that have come out that are factually inaccurate. I will say Oregon City News does a good job of allowing everyone to have an opinion. I would say I'm actually meeting with Raymond this week to talk about some of the facts that have been out there because, I mean, raise your hand if you've heard we've asked for $30 million. Raise your hand if you've read something that says we've asked for $35 million. How about 40 million? Heard. There's 3 opinion pieces that say we asked for 30, we asked for 35, we asked for 40. And if you go to Raymond's original article, it actually links in there the letter that we sent to the Urban Renewal Commission that said, we would like you to consider up to $30 million, depending on what other projects you have going and what the priorities are and what the return on investment is. Because again, the whole idea behind urban renewal is that the city is getting something out of it, right? So there are a lot of questionable facts in that article. All of you are volunteers. All of you are giving your time to the community because you care about it and you want it to be a better place. John has given a lot of time to this community. So you give him the benefit of the doubt right out of the gate. What is the name of the parcel? What do people call this parcel when they're referring to it? Before we brand it, what do they call this? Rossman Landfill. You go and look at all the TQ documents. What do they call it? The Rossman Landfill.
Except my husband, he calls it the baseball park.
It escapes me. There's a name for it though, right? So my question would be, why is it named that? Who set up that landfill originally? That's the name on the DEQ documents. So I believe there's going to be an opinion piece that comes out by some other party, not us, that tries to clarify some of the facts in that article. But there are a lot of things that are stated in that article regarding what the Parker family has done, which I don't believe is 100% accurate. So keep the record straight. The connection between us and the Parker family, we are purchasing the property from them. That is it. So after having a couple months to think about it and let it all sink in, ultimately, I think that, and this is just my opinion, you know John a lot better than I do. I think he is really frustrated with the Urban Renewal Commission and how funds have been used. That's why he has filed 2 cases, right? 2 complaints. I expect he will probably file a 3rd in regards to this ballot measure.
I have to be very, very careful about bringing up political issues during CIC meetings because back in 2015, the CIC was accused of becoming too political, and it caused quite an uproar.
Okay.
So please be aware.
We will, okay, then we will leave it as, I respect the ex-mayor. Everybody in the community is allowed their opinion. My job is to make sure everybody has accurate facts so they can make their own opinion. It's not my job to try to convince people whether or not this is a good project. That is your decision to make based on the information I provide. And my job is to make sure that information is accurate. And that we've done the best job of reaching out to the community and taking those ideas and incorporating. Fair enough? What is the impact to the code? So this is another one similar to what happens if we don't do anything. Restart Cap was looking at the site. Has anybody here seen their presentation to
Not from there.
what's that?
I said not from there.
So
They've actually just talked about how to go about Restart Cap and
correct. So they did
a couple of years ago.
They did a presentation to the city commission that said, we looked at the HABs, the hazardous algae blooms. It's because there's lack of water flow. It's shallow. It's warm. There's no shading. They looked at potentially opening up that area. The issue is there's lamprey breeding there, as well as they couldn't open it up enough to get the flow they needed. So they were looking at all of these different aspects. If you think about our site, there's kind of a spine that runs over. So you've got the road that comes up from Oregon, from Home Depot right there. That continues all the way over the site and down to Abernethy. That's kind of the spine of the site. So everything on that far side flows down to Abernethy Creek. Everything on the other side flows to multiple air catch basins. I've been told, and I think I stated this last time, until I see actual city as-bills that show exactly how that piping works. It's been explained to me that the stormwater there, because we're creating a new watershed, it's 62 acres, that can help add additional flow to the cove. So I actually went to dinner with Rob and Amanda from Restercap. What are you guys thinking about the site? Is there a way that we can use the stormwater that we are collecting to benefit other areas within this north end area? There's some question now whether they're going to continue. But if they were to continue, we would look at, we're generating this water. What can we do with it? Okay. Should I dive in? Any other questions there? Did I accurately address the 4 questions? Okay.
As much as you can, you know.
There's a lot of. Can I ask for an audio recap of the historic question and a little of the historic response? Because that's the one poll we have in our video recording.
Sure. What I'd say is, what did you hear?
Oh, we heard it all. We missed it on the report.
So in terms of a recap, I'm curious if the information I presented actually sunk in. So, right. So we are working to recap. We are working with Steve Bennett, who is with the Clackamas County Historical Society. I've been working with him for about 6 weeks now, I think. He has a lot on his plate. As I continue to get drafts, I will share it with Christina, who will pass it on. So any information I have, you will have. And then the hope is eventually to set up a committee of people from the community that are interested to talk about, here's all the information we have. How do we incorporate that into the art on site, the wayfinding, and the other components? How do we honor the history of Oregon City and specifically that site? Is that hopefully what you guys absorbed first time around? Okay. Okay, so should I jump into the ballot measure? Is that a good place to go now, or? It's not able to.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I don't know.
Yeah, you know, it would be,
I can't actually be involved at all.
no,
I defer to you, Chair, if you would prefer.
I would prefer not to discuss the ballot measure.
Okay.
I actually turned down a person that wanted to present information about it.
Can I, the question was, the question I received previously was, what city investment is being requested? May I respond to that?
Yes.
Okay. So we've done a number of economic feasibility analysis. And as we go through this information, something you'll figure out is we always take the most conservative approach, because I don't want a situation where I have to explain to the community or city staff or our investors why information we gave did not end up panning out. So we have 3 numbers for the taxes that would be generated on site. So Echo Northwest did one economic feasibility analysis, Tiberia Solutions did another one, and then city staff has their own. Tiberius is actually the lowest of the three numbers. Now, understand the reason why there's differences is what is the assessed value? So, what are we building? What are the dollar values that they're putting associated? So, what ultimately is that amount that's being taxed? And we provided to each one of those consultants, here's our general development plan, here's what's been approved. You make your own assumptions. Because I don't want to be in a meeting where you're giving information, somebody's saying, because they're your paid consultant, they're saying whatever you want them to. So again, that's why there's differences in the analysis that we're done. So Tiberius Solutions came up with, so we'll take again. We asked of the Urban Renewal Commission anything up to $30 million. They can say, we believe this project has no value at all to the community, and therefore we're not contributing anything. The ballot measure, which I can't go into detail on, lists 6 projects, which are Rossman, the Cove, the Courthouse, Simpson, Quiet Zone, 12th and Main. So how the city determines they're going to contribute funds to those, that is the 7 members of the Urban Renewal Commission. So let's take a midpoint. Well, actually, let's say 20 million, because that's one of the studies that was done. So let's say the URC says, out of the 44 million, which is approximately 35 million in bonding capacity plus $9 million that's on hand, up to 44 million, 20 million we're willing to contribute specifically to the environmental remediation of this site. So people have asked, what is that money going to? None of it's going to the Parker family. None of it's going to us. As far as I know, none of it's going to any city members or anything like that. It's all going towards those items we discussed that we are required to do for the DEQ. And oh, by the way, 20 million doesn't cover it. 30 million doesn't cover it. 40 million doesn't cover it. It's going to be closer to $50 million. So we are going after grants from the federal government. We're working on a Senate bill that's going through Salem right now. We've talked to both Metro as well as the county. They don't have a lot of options for us. So we are trying to pursue, and this is actually something I was going to address when talking about the John Williams article. It's really a decision for the community on how you want to address Rossman landfill going forward. So one way is, who are we going to blame? Who is responsible for this? Who should pay for this? Well, who set it up? Who approved it? Who are the... So during the years of operation, 60% of the solid waste in the Portland metro area went to that site. 60% of the solid waste in the Portland metro area went to that site during operation. Okay. 1983, I was 9. Nobody in my family lived in the Portland metro area at that time. I can tell you there are landfills I've contributed to. This is not one of them. So what I'm trying to say is there's plenty of blame to go around. What we're trying to do is find a solution to resolve it. And again, it's up to the community to decide whether we come up with a good solution. So at $20 million, so interest rate on a bond, let's say 5%, and we're talking about a 20-year bond. So you're looking at annual payments of $1.6 million. So over the 20 years, you're looking at $32 million. The total tip generated, and again, we're talking about the first year of operation, which is, and here we have 2027. It's $3,038,237. And then the property taxes go up each year. So over that 20 years, it's generating about $53,700,000 in taxes, property taxes. So what is the payback just on that component? It's $1.68 per dollar committed. So it's a 68% return to the city over those 20 years. Okay, what are our SDCs? 26.1 million, and that was estimated 2 years ago. So every year those go up. So maybe it's 28 million now. but at 26.1 million, now it's $2.67 per dollar committed. Okay, we're upgrading Washington, Abernethy, Redland, and contributing to the Phase 2 jug handle project. It's another $12 million. City owns land around our site. What do you think happens to the value of that land as this is developed? What other development projects occur and what property taxes are generated because of this project? So, you know, maybe you're getting up into the 3-4x range, but that's the math. That's the analysis. That wasn't too political, was it? No, I don't think so. That's very clear. Okay.
I had a question.
Yes, sir.
On the tax return, what's the total retail value or assessed value is that based on?
So it's going to get really complicated, right?
Yeah, ready.
Okay. So total building square footage approved, 1,091,700. So then you're looking at what is the cost per square foot of the different types. So we put in $220 per square foot for multifamily, $185 for commercial,
You just have like a total number of the whole project.
The total assessed value, 274, 493, 340.
Thank you.
And I think Echo Northwest was about 304 million.
It's pretty close to my estimate.
Okay, well done. You want to talk?
It's not.
Okay. Other questions? I'm sure there are plenty.
I've got one. What percentage of the buildings will be residential compared to commercial?
Is that based on individual building structures? Is it based on gross square footage?
Gross square footage,
Ooh.
roughly. I mean,
I'm going to say it was about 50-50.
oh, great.
If you think about retail, it's single story. If you think about the residential, the 3 U-shaped buildings that are along Washington are all 4-story buildings. And the reason they are is because you can do type fiber wood construction up to 4 stories. What rents are driven by 2 things. They're driven by what is the market in that specific city and what is the cost to build it. So we could actually do a 7-story building there. If you're doing a 7-story building, it's 5 levels of wood over 2 levels of concrete. You're bumping up the price to produce it. You have to bump up the rents to cover that cost to build it. So we specifically kept those 3 buildings at 4 stories because we can keep the rents lower there. The 2 inside, we also wanted to differentiate the rents. The 2 on the inside are 4/1. So it's 4 stories of wood over 1 level of type 1 concrete. And the first floor, I should have clarified this. The first story of all those buildings is retail or office. It has to be active use because the mixed use downtown, they want that first floor to have active use. So it feels like a downtown. You don't want all residences and everybody has their blinds down all the time and they're walking by and there's nothing going on.
So the first story on Washington is going to be retail?
On Washington, because there's that drop off, should I actually draw this? Anybody wants to share?
Yes.
Should we offer crayons?
Yes.
We have, you know.
The way I draw, yes.
Are you drawing stick
Here we
figures?
go. So if you think about trying to get it so everybody can see it, I'll move around to the other side. Then if you think about the site, you've got this chunk here of soil to hold back the trash with. Then you've got your clay on top. And then here's Washington Street. That's a cross section. You got it, it's a cross section. So this was the one area I was talking about where we've got to do the inadvertent discovery plan. We're using that elevation change to do a parking garage. Yeah. And there's a reason why we're doing it on the Washington side.
The flooding.
Yes, it's in the floodplain, and that's one of the potential uses.
Yeah.
The other thing is the jug handle phase 1 project specifically was done anticipating density in that area. So it's easy to go from 205 to 213 to Washington, right to this location, and then turn around and go right back. Right? You're not going through any neighborhoods. It's designated as a minor arterial street. And then you've got your buildings on top of that. So this is retail. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then these are your residential.
Yeah. So lots more traffic on Washington and Redland.
Which is I hope not Redland, because we're trying to keep everything close.
Recording stopped.
While we're waiting for that, I'd just like to say
Recording in progress.
that I will shut up again. And I keep, like you do, I keep talking into my mic.
That's why I didn't come.
Just go away. Okay, we're good?
So I wish we had the presentation because it shows the cross sections of the individual streets. But Washington Street, we have to add a turn lane in the middle. So if you're heading into downtown, you have a way to get over to turn into that parking garage without holding up traffic. 2 drive lanes, so 2 travel lanes, a bike lane, curbside parking, 5 feet of tree walls, 5 feet of sidewalk. So we are purchasing this land. We then turn right around. We design and engineer all of this. We then dedicate it to the city, and then we execute on that. And then we're paying SBCs as well. So again, we're upgrading Washington. It's a minor arterial, so that is the street that engineering wants us to put trips on. That's what we focus putting trips on.
And Abernethy? What are you doing then?
So Abernethy, and it's probably a good segue. So William, what was your question?
Transportation.
Transportation impact analysis. So I'm going to walk through quickly. How many people here actually understand how a development goes about assessing the transportation plan of the city and how their project may or may not impact it? Okay. 50-50. So what is the starting point? The starting point is the transportation system plan. You may have heard that term, TSP. The city's TSP was updated in 2013. And what that plan does is it says through 2035, here's the anticipated job growth, here's the anticipated residential growth, and it's trying to anticipate how the city's going to grow through 2035 and what projects, transportation-wise, need to be prioritized. And then it has a whole list of the projects, and it says we think these will be funded, and these might be funded, and these there's very little shot. So it's essentially trying to anticipate where the issues are going to be and how the city's going to address them. So one of the comments I get is, you're using a 2013 plan. Yeah, every single developer does, because that is the basis the city currently has. And oh, by the way, it's got growth baked into it through 2035. So one valid statement might be, how do their assumptions between 2013 and today, is reality aligning with the assumptions that are in there, right? That would be a valid question. So we sit down, our transportation engineer, you guys have probably heard this, the name is Phil Worth. He works for Kittleson. They're one of the best transportation engineers that I've worked with. He grew up in Oregon City. He tells stories about playing on Kelly Field. So he led our effort. So he sits down with the city's transportation engineer, the city's transportation engineer, the third party. And they go, okay, here's the project we're looking at. What is the scope of work going to be for the transportation impact analysis that you guys have to do? And so they have a discussion around what should the scope of work be in terms of what you're studying. Okay, the TSP for the citywide system, how many intersections did they study? Anybody want to guess? 21. So they studied 21 intersections throughout the city when they were determining that overall plan. How many intersections do we require to study? 5 on site, 25 off, 30. We are studying more intersections for our project than the city did for the entire system plan. Okay? So saying that we didn't appropriately address the locations, I'd argue you can actually done a pretty significant study, more than anything I've done in 26 years in the industry. So then, what is actually studied? So we've got 30 intersections now, and you study, first off, what is the condition today? What is the background data? What is the condition today? And they're called road tubes, those things that count your trips as you're going across. So you're looking at what is in the TSP and what's the actual number of trips at these intersections. So that's one study. Then you're looking at 2025 without the project. What is the anticipated, how do these intersections work in 2025 without the project? Okay, now we're throwing in the project. And now, how's it working? Are there any intersections there's issues with? 2 intersections were flagged. So our study, if you think about it, 30 times 3, and then you times it by 3 again, because you need to study weekday mornings, 7 to 9 a.m., weekday afternoons, 4 to 6 p.m., Saturday midday, 11:15 to 1:15 p.m. So 3 potential models, 30 intersections, 3 different times a day. So that is a 1,500-page document. And you can go to the city's website if you're a masochist and read through that entire thing. but there's 1,500 pages of data. 2 intersections were flagged as not working correctly. So Abernethy, Redland, Holcomb, that's one of them. And part of that is the queuing analysis. So looking at future growth in Park Place and coming down to that intersection and getting on to 213. So you've got 3 lanes there. The 3rd lane, now the Jug Handle Phase 2 project, if you're driving south on 213, it turns right on the Redland Road. It's supposed to continue on the other side. And so that is the Jug Handle Phase 2 project. It's about a $10 million project. And there's the overpass, the Holcomb overpass. They're actually going to have to cut back into that bank and build a retaining wall to get that 3rd lane. So they're trying to improve the queues as you're coming off Holcomb onto Redland. You're now going to be able to go right and head southbound, having a dedicated lane. So you'll have 3 lanes going for some distance. So we have to contribute to that project. On Abernethy, we're adding a bike lane. They didn't want curbside parking along that road. We're extending the queue lane, and then we have to do an analysis of the timing on the light. So we're actually going to have to look at how much traffic flow is coming from Holcomb versus Abernethy versus Redland, and recalculate how that light is working. So in addition to that, so does that make sense, kind of the study we did and the process? Let me see if there's any other important information I should cover. Oh, here's the last one. So I talked about how we're really conservative. So when you're determining how many trips is your site going to generate, you're using the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, 10th edition, reference 1, in case you're curious. And so in there, it's called ITE, and there's an ITE code. So for a residential building, historically, it generates this number of trips, and retail generates this number of trips. So one way we could have done this project is ITE 221 is multifamily housing mixed use. So we have that. So you would take the square footage for the housing applied to the trips generated there. Another ITE 820 is shopping center. So we could have said all the retail on site falls within the shopping center category. Now, here's a question for you. Why would a developer want to keep their number of trips low? There's 2 main reasons.
Less road improvement.
And so one is less chance of triggering an improvement to one of those intersections, right? What's the second one? What are you paying? What are these trips generating when we turn around to the engineering department and say, here's a check? Anyone? SDCs, your transportation SDCs. So we could have done it that way. What we actually ended up doing was adding 2 other categories. 934, fast food restaurant with drive-through windows. So we have 5 drive-throughs on site. That's going to generate more trips. We better incorporate that. The other one is 813 freestanding discount superstore, because we have 2 approved larger format retail. That may generate additional trips. So we try to be really conservative in our general development plan, knowing maybe it triggered other improvement requirements we had to do, but the last thing I want is to go through a detailed development plan for one of those parcels and somebody in the community call up Christina and go, hey, they used this ITE and it should have been this one, and we're appealing. So I feel like we've actually been very conservative in our approach. I don't know if you guys would agree, but yes.
You should happen to factor in what might happen when the roads start getting told. I mean, you've got a lot.
So, oh jeez, is that political? We started this project 3 years ago. I'll be honest, we started this before every single meeting. And thank you for bringing up tolls, because I haven't been in a meeting yet that didn't bring up tolls. So first of all, let's talk about the concept behind mixed use. Whether you believe it or not, the whole idea behind mixed use is You're putting where people live and where people work and where people shop all in the same location to try to reduce the number of trips. It works best when there's significant public transportation. So one of the things we're looking at is one, discussions with TriMet already about how do we increase the number of they decrease their number of bus routes. We're giving them a reason. Hey, look at this ridership. And we increase the number of trips here. The other one is we need a trolley system. A trolley system that connects Red Soils campus from Water Village to downtown and our site. Potentially the Cove as well. And we are willing to be the impetus to get that in place and help finance it. We don't want to manage that going forward, but if there's a financial commitment to get it going, we think that makes sense. And part of the reason we think that makes sense, not even including the parking garage, which will have a public component to it. I love asking you guys questions, making sure you're on your toes. How many public stalls do we have on the site? Just the road system on the site we built. How many public parking spaces do we have on site? 531, correct? So there's going to be a full section of the parking garage as well. We're going to try to get that near the interpretive center so it can be overflow when there's events there. But our hope is that people can come to the site, park for the day, explore Oregon City, and then jump right back on freeway. So we're looking at how can we reduce the number of trips on the roads. If ODOT truly decides that they're going to use Oregon City and West Lynn as a guinea pig project, I wouldn't want to try to speculate what that impact would be. I would think it'd be more on 99, yes, than Washington, but I don't know.
I will tell.
So there's a free shuttle for Clackamas County right now, and they're trying to utilize that. Is there any type of ideas about incorporating with that on this trolley situation? Because a lot of us miss the trolley that used to be in Oregon City, and we're sad that it was sold. Is there maybe a concept like that where it actually looks like that incorporates with county, possibly? And then the other, I'll have another thing after you're done answering that. Another question.
It would seem if we were putting a system in place like that, a soft wheel trolley system. So an OCBA event Thursday night, and Victoria actually was talking about the two trolleys that used to be here, and one has been now decommissioned, taken apart, and the other one was sold somewhere else. I'm sure there are trolleys out there that we can look into. I don't know how excited the city or county will be about having a driver be an employee and who's maintaining it. I think that's going to be the stickiest component. Like going and purchasing them, we can facilitate that. Every time that driver takes a wrong turn, I really don't want to hear about it. So I don't want to get a call when the tire needs to be replaced.
A few years ago, we had those trolleys, of course, you know about that. And I was a strong advocate for the trolleys. In fact, I was a leader in keeping the trolleys operating for the last year because the city commission was going to shut them down. And I gave them enough ammunition to keep them going for another year. However, their maintenance cost was quite high. And another problem was no city department wanted to assume responsibility for the maintenance and operation of the trolleys. So those are some obstacles that probably would come up. I felt like the trolleys are a great idea.
Did you just volunteer to lead that effort? Because that's what I heard, but
I'm a little too involved in those things.
understood.
It could incorporate with tourism in a sense, you know. Yeah. And then the other thing I was to mention is I lived through my college years in Arizona, lived in Texas, outside malls are a huge thing. And when then Bridgeport came in, I used to remember it was a gravel pit as a child. It was the first kind of like Californication, I call it, mall, where it's outside. And it really doesn't have a lot that stands out with it very much, in my opinion. My brother-in-law calls it mini Babylon, because he, makes a joke about it. What do you think with this one could actually, we're talking about some history, we're talking about what could stand out differently for Oregon City than being like a typical outside mall, in California or Arizona or Bridgeport Village?
That's a tough one. It's a good question. I would say, first off, I would hope the architecture. So if you look at our OCBA presentation, and actually the presentation that we did to the Planning Commission and our land use application, you'll see the palette of materials we're proposing. So we walked up and down the historic downtown area, took photos. You want to respect that architecture. You don't want to replicate it. It never goes well. So I'm not an architect. So LRS's job will be, how do we respect that downtown area? How do we support it without trying to replicate it? We're going to need help figuring out how, again, I always come back to these 8 pieces of art. It's 2 per district, but we're going to need help on what type of signage, what type of species plantings, what is that art? And there's other components that at this moment aren't coming to mind, but there's input that we're going to need to get it right.
I wonder if there's that little, if you end up looking at an ice skating rink and then there's that little lake, the little, flood lake that had like a little nickname or something that you call the rink or something in the future. That's a possibility. So we can actually find out what that was called. Yeah, he's looking into it. You saw that. Yeah. What I highlighted.
Actually, there's so much call for indoor arena activities. So I don't know if you can design your facility to at one point change into a concert hall, the next moment turn into a rodeo ring, and then another moment you can take it back. I mean, they kind of make those multi-use things, and to our sometimes ice capades.
We're assessing a bunch of different options for multi-generational indoor active entertainment. If this project moves forward, I promise you that will be on site. When we did, I don't know if you guys saw, Evan Howells, who is one of the 8th grade teachers at Tumawana Middle School. Did you have a question?
Are you going to take into account any of the ideas from the empty spaces project at the middle school?
Absolutely. So Evan Howells called us up and said, every year we pick a site and we do a whole analysis on it. Would you guys be willing to work with us? I said, absolutely. What do you need us to do? And actually, Christina, Adam, and I went and presented to it's like 300 students. It's a big 8th grade class. And they broke up into groups of 4 to 5. And there was a day where between 11:30 and 1, we tried to get through 70, 75 presentations. I mean, it was a sprint. I think I got through half of them. Though they had different ideas, their themes were very much similar. So the question I asked after every presentation was, if you're going to hang out with your friends today in Oregon City, where are you going? And it was, if we're not going to a friend's house, it's the library, it is Clackamas Town Center, it is Bridgeport. Those were the 3. And so they're looking for safe areas, in some cases conditioned space. But that was uniform across the board. They want somewhere they can go and feel safe And the word inclusive was actually used a lot. And that's what resonated the most with me.
Great ideas for artwork.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to. Am I coming back? 5 minutes. Because we have other.
I'm good on sport.
I have an idea. Maybe you gain some support in the community. Is fund new covers for the wagon train.
The bonnets. The bonnets. Already talked with Gail about that.
Oh.
The challenge is finding a material that won't blow off and that won't cost more maintenance in the first 5 years than the cost to actually construct it. That is something we're looking at.
Oh, wow.
The other thing is there's $3 million in parks SDCs. So what can the parks do with $3 million? Maybe reduce some charges?
Yeah.
Just saying. That's political.
I'm just super sensitive about it.
Yeah.
I know that you're gonna be including some, affordable housing, but are you gonna put in some low income housing also?
I love having this conversation because everybody has a different opinion. So what is the difference between low income and affordable?
Low income is usually somebody who's being helped out by the government in order to get into the first homes. Subsidized. Thank you.
Currently, we haven't determined whether we are going to develop all those 5 buildings in residential, if we're going to sell some of them to affordable developers such as Related Northwest. Steph Condor is an amazing developer. So we have relationships with affordable housing developers. They have access to specific funds that we do not. That is not our forte. I'll be straight up honest. So we would bring in a partner. Right now, we're looking at what would be considered 60% or 80% median family income. So in a lot of cases, those are not specifically individuals that are receiving subsidies from the government. So I haven't spent as much time assessing them.
Okay. And are you going to be doing your building? I'm assuming you're going to try to be as ecological because you're an ecological company and in your building practices, but are you going to include that in the apartment living, like capturing some of the gray waters?
So I've been a lead AP, U.S. Green Building Council since 2009, before it was a fad. I've done a bunch of platinum and gold certified buildings. I've also done Green Globes buildings, worked with the Energy Trust of Oregon on almost every project we do. Right now, the big discussion we're having is natural gas, no natural gas, right? That's one of the really hot discussions out there. I can tell you that most likely the buildings will be certified underneath one of those programs. And in fact, a lot of the equity partners, even if it wasn't the right thing to do, even if we did do it already, a lot of the equity partners now are pushing for that, which is terrific.
When you reach out for your suggested plantings, there's quite a few people that are extremely talented in Oregon City. So you mentioned that. I'm sure there'll be quite a few people and our natural resources too.
I say this with all sincerity. This is a complex project. This is a huge project. We're going to need help to get it right so that the community is excited about what ultimately is done. And the only way that we can do that is we outreach. And the same outreach we've been doing for 3 years. That doesn't stop.
One more question, Dave.
So you made one statement that said, if this is to happen, how many things have to fall into place in order for it to become a reality? And what is it that we can do to help make it happen?
Question for that.
One question.
I sincerely appreciate you asking. When we started this project, I had people that I had worked with for the last couple of decades go, do you actually think you can pull this off? Right? Look at all these developers that fail. Look at all the challenges with the environmental and geotech. Right? I'll be honest. There's a lot of developers that are like, Oregon City, they're very combative. It's not worth the effort. There's also some people, nothing personal, Adam, that think the political situation, right? 3 mayors, 3 years, right? So we started with this many things that we had to resolve. We got the PPA done. We got all these negotiations done. We got our land use entitlements, no appeals. So we're down now to really the financing component. That is the big hurdle right now. And so, again, I think we're flying back to DC in March to talk with the Department of Transportation about some of the grant programs. Next week, I have testimony in San Juan before the Senate Energy and Environmental Committee on a potential Senate bill to show. I mean, understand there's much larger theme here, which is everybody wants to push the urban growth boundary. Everybody wants to take greenfield sites. They're easy to build on, right? Have people drive all the way across town through the infrastructure, have to build out the utilities to those locations. Let's look what's already in the middle of town at the right location with the infrastructure and say that site is already blighted. Why aren't we addressing that? And the reason is it's hard. It's really hard. So, real quick.
Yeah, I got one observation. You asked how this is a different kind of development to, say, Bridgeport. Well, I think it is because you're providing housing. And a lot of these malls, these open air malls they're dead by 9 o'clock, but you're going to integrate housing, which is great. But what gives you the confidence that you're going to get enough retail when so many malls across the nation are going out of business? Big box stores are going out of business. Retail is crashing because everyone's doing it online. And I understand you can say, well, there's independent small businesses that can come in, but do they have the cash to pay the rents that you're going to be requiring to make it pencil out? So anchor stores, I mean, just that. I mean, it must be a bit of a headache, I would think, to find enough retail to fill it.
You would be shocked. So there's a couple things. I know we've got to go quick. There's a couple things that are occurring right now. First of all, it is so difficult to produce quality retail in sub-urban settings that is one of the few areas where rents actually have continued to go up. So office has dropped out, urban retail has dropped way out. Housing continues to be a challenge to produce, but there have been great retailers tracking this specific site for 2 decades. I have 23 unsolicited LOIs of people saying we want to be on this site. There is a string on our Facebook site, which I know you've written on, so thank you for being engaged. That everybody's saying this is what we want to see on site. And we actually made a list of all of those brands, gave it to our brokers and said, here's the info we've got, go get to work. So right now, all of the LOIs are non-binding because we don't have the funding all lined up, so we can't sign on the line that then all their due diligence we have to pay for until we know that project is going forward, which means we've gotten the public funds to raise the private funds to move forward. So, we've heard of grocer. We've talked to 2 grocers. One has the initials TJ. Another one has the initials NS. We have we've talked to a number of larger format we're trying to limit that on the site. I have concerns about how does that impact the downtown businesses. So it's easy. I've been working with Liz Hanover. I'm actually on the OCBA board now. Hey, so I'm really excited about.
You mean Doug's?
What?
Doug board?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Doug board. I apologize. Working with Liz Hanover for the last 3 years, specifically, what businesses are downtown and what do we need to have on site to avoid a situation where we're adding additional competition.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. That's not good.
Thanks for watching this. I'm gonna get it.
I'd like to say that there's been a tremendous amount of information that you're giving us tonight. And I don't expect the members of the CIC to bring all that information back to your neighborhood. So I think it will enable you to answer a whole lot of questions.
We've asked every neighborhood association if we can come and speak. And Dan, was it helpful?
Here we had lots of questions, a lot of people want more time for the talk.
Yeah, so we've got 12 meetings set up in the next 3 months. I'd like that to be 20.
Yeah.
Again, my job is to get information out there so people are educated and make their own decision.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Seth.
We'll have to move along quickly here. Our next subject is staff liaison.
Sure, be very quick. There's a link on the packet. There's volunteer requests for cleanup and restoration work at Singer Creek through the Oregon City Watershed Council. So the link's on there. I have a link to Public Works winter response because everyone always asks, even though I haven't had anything so far, but you never know. Don't worry, I have the zone secrets. And then, as always, speaking of political speech, some of the main reasons I look at all your postcards every time is to make sure there is no political speech. So you can say, like, just like if there was candidate forums, like so-and-so candidate is here to speak, you can announce that with that. Or if Seth Henderson is going to come speak from Summit about the robust development, that's a fact, you can put that on this card. But what the city can never pay for, and what you should be doing as a little connection to the city as a public body, is promoting that political speech. So just make sure when you do your presentations that the neighborhood is neither supporting nor not supporting the think of yourself as like a candidate form. So that's everyone make sure we do our job right. And as staff, I can't be involved with anything related to that either. So I try to really stay at arm's length, because once that comes out, there's a big wall between me and the election. I know Terry LaSalle's going to talk about minutes, so I'm going to give a little update and then I'll let you speak, because Bob spoke at the city commission. Thank you. So Angelique, our assistant city recorder, has been doing an audit this fall, looking at what minutes have been adopted but never uploaded to our system, what minutes were done by the library through COVID but haven't been sent through for adoption, and then what minutes we still need to do minutes. We still need to do. And so I'll have an update for you at the next meeting. I actually have a bunch of minutes from when the library worked on it during COVID. So be ready for a big batch of minutes next meeting. I didn't want to dump them all on the city CIC this meeting, but we'll see. I'll see what I have in that packet, and I'll kind of provide an update of their audit. The real hard, complicated part is we used to have a company called Granicus. So here on the website, you click to like older than 2018, you go to a separate web page. That's from our old contract, and all those meeting videos and minutes, they just are hanging out basically a link, a web link. So if we want to integrate it into our new meeting code system, we have to create new meetings and then download or upload back up to
our YouTube channel. So that's one thing Angelique is looking at. Maybe we do that just for the quasi judicial. For the other ones, maybe we can send them to another better long-term place. So I'll have more information on that. Moving forward, the CIC will work to see, do you want to, does the department want to pay for transcription service? Do you want to take it back and do your own secretary again? The CIC used to do that. There's lots of ideas moving forward, but I think we're trying to do the audit for everything before and then get direction for moving forward. So,
just to give a little background on that, on January 18th, I addressed the city commission about my concerns about the lack of written minutes for almost every committee, board, commission in the city. And some of the lack of written minutes caused a research problem for somebody. Because if you want to research one or two items at a particular meeting, and the meeting lasted 3 hours, and that particular item took 15 minutes, going through a video to try to find that little snippet of information was quite difficult. If the minutes are in a written form, you just put it on your screen, scan down it, find it, and it's all over. You're done, finished with it. My biggest concern was the lack of minutes, written minutes for the Planning Commission, the Historic Review Board, and the Urban Renewal Commission, because those 3 committees actually have fiscal implications and livability implications within the city. And some of them actually, most of them have video recording, but in some cases they did not have either the minutes or the video for those meetings. So those, I don't know how to like get those meetings reconstructed. I don't think they ever will. But anyway, they're having to go through all this work, and it's all my fault. And I'm not ashamed to cause that kind of work at all.
There's several old, at least 2020 meetings that have been uploaded to YouTube in the last week.
I know, I was wondering what the feed.
Yeah. So and I know that the city commission expressed concern at the end of my presentation.
Yeah.
Concerned about, whoa, this shouldn't be happening. We got to do something. So I think that they've given the staff their wishes to get this corrected. Now let's see here. You're through with your presentation.
just real quickly, because I had to close the Zoom a couple times, I have an audio recording, and I have like probably 3 different video recordings, so I'm gonna work with the Landfill stuff. Push them together. So just know that it may take a couple days. This one's gonna take a little bit to get that live.
Yeah.
But I'll have to work on Landfills to stitch together a couple of videos.
Well, thank you so much for your efforts. Really.
Thank you.
Amen.
We'll go right to the roundtable now, and we'll start with Kenema, Linda.
Okay, I can report that the city or the Parks and Recreation is no longer going to charge neighborhood associations fees for using shelters. The library is going to be available to neighborhood meetings as well. You'll have to get on the list, you'll have to be trained, but that will be, I think, March. Well, they'll be taking applications in March. There'll be up to 6 months of notice to get on. You're going to have 2 people trained from every neighborhood to come in to use the locks, shut the doors, but that's going to be available to us, which I think is a great thing. And in Kenema, we have a new member, Mr. Green, who is now on the HRD. We think an awful lot of Mr. Green. He built a home for himself and his family in Kenema. He's a lifetime builder. He has great expertise. And the horrors that he had to go through building a home in Kenema took him 3 years to build a house. So maybe he can help get some of this stuff done, so it's faster to get the homes built. This is just one little house. Ridiculous. Oregon City has such a poor reputation for building in the community. And then I just need to ask a question about storage for neighborhood files. We have a past chair of Kenema who is leaving, and they have found some boxes next to their convertible or in the garage, and we need to know what to do with this storage thing. So
Steve can answer that question.
The basement of the fire station.
Which fire station?
On Seth Street.
The one across from Singer Hill. There.
Right.
Okay.
And I can get you the code.
Okay.
I got it from our mayor.
That's okay.
Now she knows who's giving out the code.
Well, that room has been available to the CIC for I don't know how many years.
There's no room in it, but for things.
Was that all? Yeah. Yes.
I think, Dave Green, from Kenema to, add to Linda will be a great asset to that committee, with his expertise and working through the calamity of like going through the process of like, you know, either remodeling or building. So we're really quite proud of him. The library thing is a real good thing with McLaughlin. We were talking earlier about with the change of policy with Greg Williams and his advocacy for getting the neighborhoods to associate closer to their neighborhood. It's going to be a plus for us. It's going to be more of an encouragement for people who live in a neighborhood to find a location that they can feel good about going to without wondering where they have to go. In the past, we've been, as you've heard all here, some of you in the past, that we've had the help through some of our members who had affiliation with the church, and we've been meeting in different places over the last few years pre-COVID. So this is a real good thing too, and we're quite proud of the work that the library board did. They invited the steering committee down there and told us about this. I guess this was after McLaughlin was already involved in the new program of training and figuring out the policy to work within the neighborhood. So happy to say that and add to it. That's it.
Hey, copy of Dan.
Well, it's my first meeting, and the gentleman here today, he spent 2 hours after the meeting, plus we had 2 other guests. We virtually had no time to get together afterwards and get the results and get some opinions, and we will have it for the next meetings.
You go, Carla.
So we had our last meeting, and we had elections, which we didn't have any new candidates, sadly to say. We had a for vice chair and vice chair. I think we're going to kind of keep dialogues open if someone new wants to pop in and get involved. We did a seat swap. We had Barrett's from Public Works come and talk about plantings that are in the beginnings of native plants. We're having our next meeting. I may need more postcard money because we have John Williams coming to update, like give us more information about urban renewal, and then we have Summit coming as well. So those are that's pretty much it. Adam, real quick, by wanting to mention our motion and our vote, when you explained it on public record for the city commission, it was missing on how it affects families in terms of park fees. And I know you're probably talking about that privately, and then also about just overall beyond just the neighborhoods, the MLU fees. I'm hoping for public record you can clarify that just in the future so that it's very clear on what our motion was and how we voted, because I want it just out there, if you don't mind.
And there's a meeting tomorrow on this already.
So sounds great. If you could say it publicly on public record how we voted and the specifics on that, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Carla covered everything that we did in our meeting. However, I did go to the commissioners to speak on an issue that was going to possibly come up for vote. it seems to me, I was concerned about Park Place Park and the road going through Park Place Park. And right now, they have Hiram, and they were going to possibly put one up to the north side of the parking structure. But Denise McGriff, thank you very much, she's a tree lover, asked Parks to go meet me up there because those are heritage trees and they were forgetting about the heritage trees that this would impact. So I measured off with what a arborist would suggest would be a minimal setback off the trees. You guys will damage severely one of the Atlas cedars. The 300-year-old oak will die because it'll cut right into the roots when you make the turn. So they've taken it for review because I suggested they go back and look at possible costs. What it'll cost to replace that the playground, move it, put in drainage of a whole new place, because Park Place Park is a very wet park. Put in all new cement around there. I can even take 1/3 or 1/2 of what it costed in Chapin. So I suggested that they purchase a lot. So that's kind of, we'll see if it goes forward, but we don't want to set a precedence cutting roads to our chart parks. So even though it has to go to vote from the people, they were forgetting to mention some very important things, and that's our canopy. So it's been diverse for now. Thank you very much for our commission. He said they want to review us, so thank you very much. And that kudos right back. I'm watching the agendas.
Okay, Hillendale, sir.
Big things happening in Hillendale. We had a meeting at the transportation facility and people showed up. We had both fire department and police come, and the fire department talked about the fire levy, so that may have been part of the reason people showed up. I don't know, but we're having a steering committee meeting tomorrow night, and because we're having Chase Bank do a video Zoom presentation, hopefully we'll just get Christina coming and help us with that. So, and it's very exciting. Josh might have something to add.
You're not excited about it at all.
We should arrange for something great, by the way, or, interested in music. I got it work really well.
Josh, did you have anything for us?
I was just going to say it was a great turnout at our neighborhood association meeting. It was out of the, unfortunately, not many that I've attended, but out of the few I have attended, that was definitely the most people I'd seen at one. So, and I think William said that was probably right up there with the top ones he's seen. So, good turnout, good conversations amongst everybody. Yeah, and they nominated me to be here, so I appreciate everybody accepting me in and with open arms and all that. Looking forward to it. Yeah. Last week.
Josh should be coming up in the next available meeting. I know.
They did it as last.
Oh, did they? I know.
They didn't do it by name, but they went off the agenda. They said that's fine. People were on the agenda. They all nodded their heads.
Yeah. So that's not.
Yes.
Okay, good, great. And you can vote. Well, we have votes. Let's see here. Denise McLaughlin.
So we had a meeting last month and we have finally elected officers for the steering committee and the general meeting. We have a new vice chair. He's also the new representative for McLaughlin neighborhood for the HRB. Can I forget his name?
Yeah, both, and either of us can find it.
Tim Howe.
Yes, yes. I was going at T.
Yeah, so he's been involved in neighborhood and city things for a long time. So it'll be great to have his expertise. Everybody else stayed the same because we've been meeting on Zoom. But the good news is this next month we get to meet, we're going to meet at the Baptist Church. And we're still pursuing the library, and these guys have pushed it open a little bit more. So we've got 3 volunteers to do the training. So we'll have to, but we might like the Baptist church better, you know. So that's about all that's going on. We have a couple land use issues that will be resolved.
Yeah. Will, did you have anything for us?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I haven't.
So we had a steering committee meeting in January. We're still doing steering committee on Zoom. So we need to make sure that we delete those old ones. Or move them to YouTube or something. So I will get with our secretary. Our next meeting, we will have a presentation from
Summit.
Summit. So it'll probably run long and run loud. So, especially when he mentions that one of the intersections that's going to fail with his, it's already going to fail because of other development in our area. Holcomb, Redland, Abernethy. So, let's see, anything else? No, I don't think there was anything major important. So,
okay, River Crest, Emily.
I have a lot to report. We had some discussions with Gardner Middle School about housing space. So we finally have in-person locations to meet at, and they're not going to charge us. So if anyone is still in need of a meeting space, students is a really great contact. Who's been really fantastic to work with. I hear that the library is also not an option. The other things, we're having Summit come for our next neighborhood association meeting. Along with, I think it's called Project Zero about neighborhood safety, and foster care representative coming to give a talk, and we will probably schedule Abernethy for the there's a lot. Just believe it for the yeah, I think that's about all I have.
Okay, yeah, your turn.
Thank you. So as we've talked about a little bit tonight already, we have a special election coming up. And so if you all could, regardless of how you feel on the issue that we presented, just making sure your residents know about it, because it is a special election in an off year. And so the turnout is probably going to be low. And so each additional voter is going to have even more of a proportional voice in the outcome of this election. And so what Dee Dee was talking about, we did decide to table the discussion about Park Place Park. I want you all to know that the number one priority, at least for me, is to figure out how we can prevent development in that area so that it can remain a public park for us. And so whether that's us purchasing it or whether we have to do something more difficult like allowing that through road, whatever we can do to make sure that it remains in public hands is something that I think is at the top of all of our minds. So I want to assure you of that.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
In regard to the existing right of way, if the new plan goes through with that new road on the back side of the park, would there be a possibility to include a provision that existing right of way be permanently vacated?
That's something that we've talked about. It would be after the passage of the ballot measure, if I remember it correctly. And so that was something that I was thinking about maybe suggesting we let the ballot measure move forward so that if it does go in the positive, that at least gives us the opportunity to have that conversation about vacating. But we wouldn't be able to unless we have the ballot measure passed. And so,
But just to let you know, this is where it runs up right through the middle of the park. That's Hiram. They're talking about coming in on front, going up. There's the parking lot right there.
Yeah, I know where they're going.
Okay. It will take out that tree and that tree, just like did the turn.
Another thing is that you've all heard me talk a lot about my Youth Advisory Commission policy, which the deadline to apply has just passed, and I'm really very excited. We have 11 applicants, and so the mayor and I will be hosting interviews this week, actually, and so we're going to hopefully get that up and running here soon. And one thing that I neglected to mention about that policy is that it also comes with the creation of a new community engagement coordinator position. And so one thing that I've heard time and time again is that we need to have more resources for our neighborhood associations in our community. And so as part of my discussions trying to formulate this policy, we came to the conclusion that we need to have someone specific for neighborhood associations, for community volunteers, someone to staff this new committee. And so be looking out for that and new developments there. Next thing, tolling is always on my radar. The legislature is back in session. That's also where I work during the day. And so I joke that you also have a part-time lobbyist in Salem as well as reaching out to myself personally. And so we just had a recent meeting with the city of West Lynn, which has gotten some good coverage that we're not going to continue to just let it go with the flow. We're going to continue raising our voices on this. And the most important thing is that you all remember that instead of filling our city commission rooms, what we really need to do is put the pressure on our state legislators, because in the end, they're the ones who are going to have the final say on this. Because our city commission, the Westland City Council, we agree with you. The pressure needs to be at the state level. The meeting places issue has already been addressed by Linda. That's something I've gotten an earful on the meeting spaces and the park fees. And so what I have in turn been giving an earful to our staff about the meeting places and the parks fees, and I'm happy to report that it's already been reported that we're making a lot of significant progress on that. And so I really want to just say that I appreciate the input that I've been getting here, because that's been instrumental in my ability to reach out to staff and express those concerns, so that we have been able to make a lot of really good progress on that front. And then we appreciate your effort. Anything on that behalf. And then lastly, as I had already mentioned, we're discussing the parks fees again tomorrow. So there's a long way to go, but at least as it relates to neighborhood associations, that was my top concern. So that's what I have.
What is the ballot measure?
So the ballot measure for May,
Yes.
the one that will be appearing is to allow for bonded indebtedness for the urban renewal plan. Okay. So that we could fund projects.
This meeting is adjourned.
All right, so who wants to know?